Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is Scott Spatz, the President of Cooperative Systems, and welcome to our first Tech Tips episode from CoopSys for the year 2020. We thought it would be a good time to reflect kind of on the last year and the cyber landscape of the previous year, and then we can talk about what's coming up on the horizon for this year. So the internet climate right now is pretty volatile, and so this is designed to help you and your staff and your business be more resilient than ever, even while things aren't going to get any simpler or less scary over time. There's certainly a disagreement about what the most important cyber threats to focus on are, but everyone will agree that cybersecurity is more important than ever. So let's start by taking kind of a 10,000-foot view of some of the biggest cyber issues here in 2019. There's still certainly a huge concerns going forward in early 2020, so this sort of doubles as the first half of our list on warnings for the upcoming year. First of all, we saw an unprecedented amount of malware attacks on municipalities, transportation service departments, and utility companies, the effects of which can cripple entire towns and cities. In Texas this past August, for example, 22 towns and cities were simultaneously hit with ransomware that stopped all of them in their tracks. Things like birth certificates and death certificates weren't available online during that time. They couldn't accept any sort of utility payments online, and their office operations were interrupted across all their departments. In the case of some of these local government attacks, even though cyber insurance might have been in place to cover the ransomware itself, it's the taxpayers who end up on the hook, really for whatever the deductible is. And that's not taking into account all the other non-monetary losses, things like confidence and trust in their local governments. And we know that's a huge consequence for organizations of all shapes and sizes who become victims of these cyber attacks. Definitely take a look at our ransomware tech tips episode if you haven't yet, because we talk and walk through all the ways to avoid ransomware, and we talk about what you can do in your business if, God forbid, you do become the victim. And the second one listed here is mobile malware. And the truth is, most of us are guilty of downloading an app here or there that we didn't spend time researching first to make sure it's coming from a reputable app developer or that it has strong security features. Well, some pretty staggering stats have emerged from the data collected in 2019 that make you want to slow down before you download your next app. In one study conducted by the University of Cambridge, for instance, they found that over 80% of Android devices in use are exposed to at least one critical vulnerability right now, and that threat is lingering on their device. Apple users are at risk too, contrary to the outdated belief that they're immune. Apple does work hard to clean out risky apps from the App Store, but third-party apps get added to the App Store every single day, and they're very much a threat to users while they're available. So take a close look at who's publishing your new apps that you're downloading, and those security features that should be in place before moving forward with that download. And the third item here is referring to how severe and targeted phishing attacks and phishing risks are becoming. There's more intelligence gathering along the way before cyber criminals make their big moves, and we're seeing more and more of those multi-step compounded attacks that leverage multiple contacts and tools to get the job done. Step one might be to phish your employees and get in via some form of malware, and then waiting as much time as possible through mailboxes and file systems. And from there, second stage might be the CEO fraud or the wire fraud scenario, where the hacker knows just what to say and is able to fly under the radar, so you don't suspect that criminal activity. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this since we have so many resources on our blog and in our webinars that address this, but even with the strongest technical resources available out there in place, the number one thing that you can do to try to prevent phishing is to train your staff how to not take that bait. First line of defense can stop this sort of attack dead in its tracks, even without the involvement of any cybersecurity tools or software. And regardless of how many technical protections businesses have out there, confidence is still extremely low among business owners and IT managers. According to a recent global cyber risk perception survey, only about 11% of organizations report high confidence in their ability to detect and mitigate attacks. This is something we expect to continue to be true, knowing just how rapidly the threat landscape evolves. It's so important to learn what tools, what it looks like to be prepared and what it takes to be resilient. So get your disaster recovery plan in place, test your backups, and most importantly, as we mentioned, train your users. The last note here touches on somewhat a positive development. Even though more and more cyber criminals are arming themselves with artificial intelligence that can run around the clock and try to permeate systems of all shapes and sizes, security companies are doing something to combat that. They've started to roll out powerful AI features with their products and that automates detection and cleanup of those cyber events. By monitoring network traffic and establishing baselines for what normal activity looks like in business systems, these tools are able to use the information they gather to then be able to flag suspicious and unusual behavior and other elements. Any anomalies can either then be squashed by the software through technical cleanout techniques, or the issue is brought to internal IT personnel or an IT team who can make decisions on how the company will react. So thanks to this machine learning, businesses can employ this sort of intelligent technology to guard themselves against the hackers' automated activities. So those 2019 issues have a ton of momentum and are effectively among the warnings for 2020. And that being said, we have a couple of predictions unique to 2020 that you need to look out for. First, this topic is obvious and we know it's on the minds of many, the 2020 election. There's no doubt that we'll see some malicious activity, and it's likely to come in multiple forms. Election security is definitely top of mind for voters. There is definitively risk there, and will likely be some manipulation and tampering. There's also more digital-minded first-time voters, which means more reliance on internet-connected systems to participate in the election. Misinformation campaigns are also certainly sure to have an impact. A really common example of this are the AI-generated deepfakes. These are pictures and videos that seem to show certain politicians saying and doing things that they never actually said or did. This is an extremely powerful tool that can be used in a malicious way to essentially weaponize false information. This means that thanks in large part to social media, fake news, if you will, and representations of candidates and news events can circulate to reach millions of people in seconds. This is all related to the reality that there's a sort of emerging global cyber war that is continuing to gain momentum. So this definitely belongs at the top of our warnings list. Make sure you don't believe everything you see and read. And this also might seem kind of obvious, but the Internet of Things or IoT devices and apps are still seriously lacking the security they need, given how prevalent they are now. There are literally billions of IoT devices in use out there, and a considerable chunk of those are operating without security features built in and active. There are both consumer and industry applications for IoT, and it all offers a ton of opportunity for efficiencies in monitoring, but with this, there's a ton of risk. Risk to end users and risk to company security if left unmanaged. This is true for everything from the super high-tech autonomous vehicle technologies all the way down to even seemingly harmless tools like home thermostats. There are cybersecurity implications, physical safety concerns, and general privacy concerns, as we know. There's just such a flood of data, and there's such diversity among the resources used to enable these technologies that most traditional cybersecurity solutions are less effective in the case of IoT. And the introduction of 5G on the mobile networks, which is bringing fast speeds and more bandwidth to our mobile devices, is going to further complicate the IoT security situation, because 5G could bypass some of the cybersecurity technologies that are in place when you connect to traditional wireless networks. So if you're using IoT devices, we strongly encourage you to pay close attention to the policies and controls available to protect your connections, and just to be aware of what networks you're connected to and what data you're making available by using those devices. So hopefully these warnings will help you and your team to better define how you're protecting your business this coming year. Certainly don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any other questions. A security awareness program is really critical given the threats landscape we talked about here and the specific issues we're facing in the coming year. These training and testing programs can have a huge impact on your company's ability to defend off attackers. So certainly please get in touch with us if you're interested in putting one in place. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us for our next Tech Tips from CoopSys episode. Take care.